Please be seated. I'd like to welcome you to Liverpool Parish Church today. We are the parish church of the city, but we are also the Seafarers Church. In the same month that the MP Derbyshire sank, there was a service at Liverpool Cathedral. Since then, the parish church has offered ongoing support to the Derbyshire families. We're joined today by one of my predecessors, the very Reverend Nicholas Freeling, who stood alongside the families in their struggle to discover the truth about the sinking. And this event was also the catalyst for the creation of Maritime Chapel in this church, which is just over here. And in the centre of that is a book donated by the Derbyshire Families Associations, which records at the front the names of all those who lost their lives in 1980, but has also been filled since with the names of other seafarers who wish to be commemorated here. But for the last few years, I've worked with the Derbyshire Families Association to continue that relationship with the church and with all of those part of that wider association. And we've been working towards establishing a permanent memorial, reminding us not just of those who died. You'll see that their names are recorded on the memorial outside. But the memorial is also a reminder of the ongoing fight to improve maritime safety. As with all things never go entirely to plan, and there are little bits of the landscaping which haven't been finished, largely because some inscribed bricks were sitting on the ship outside Southampton for a little too long. That's the Merchant Navy for you. They have arrived, but not in time to get them installed. But those bricks have the initials of all those who lost their lives in 1980 as well. We put a couple of the bricks on a table just in the narthex in the entrance to the church, and the plan of how they will go in, so that even if you don't see it out there physically today, you can see what it will look like, and hopefully return at a later point, after a week or about a week, I think, and you'll see them in place. After this service, there is a reception. I'm afraid with the number of people we have here today, with over 400 of us here, and capacity is limited. So for those invited guests, and you know who they are, there's a reception afterwards in the Rapids Club. It's also a great pleasure, as well as welcoming all of you here today, to welcome John Prescott, Lord Prescott, who will open the garden later. Lord Prescott is well known for his own seafaring connections to Liverpool, but it was when he was Deputy Prime Minister that he intervened to establish a new inquiry into the sinking of the MV Derbyshire. We begin with a prayer. Let us pray. Lord God, Creator of land and sea, we remember with sorrow the MV Derbyshire and pray for all who lost their lives on her. Be with us today as we hear their story and help us to commemorate their lives. We give thanks for those who fought for truth and pray for all those who are at sea today. Strengthen and uphold our merchant navy and bring them safely home, where they may praise you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever.
Amen.
Would you please stand for our first hymn?
Oh Good morning. The Derbyshire was originally named the Liverpool Bridge. On the 10th of June in 1976, she left Haverton Hill, On the 10th of June 1976, she sailed with ballast from Hamburg to Flushing Roads, where she anchored on the morning of the 12th of June 1976 to take fuel oil from barges. Later that day, an explosion occurred in her package boiler, instantly killing 3rd Engineer Officer Robert Bob Prescott and critically injuring 1st Electrical Officer Maxwell Bigham, who was later to die from his injuries whilst in hospital in Holland. Bob Prescott was 25. He joined the company in 1967 as an engineering cadet. The eldest of 7 children, he was unmarried and lived with his parents in Hythe in Liverpool. Maxwell Bigham, aged 26, joined the Bibby line from Andrew Weir and Company in 73, lived with his family in Glasgow. He left a widow and 2 young children. We have some of the family members here today, and we do welcome them to join us. I'm speaking as a chaplain, the port chaplain. I worked with the Sailors Society, and I'm the chaplain to the Derbyshire families. The most unsavoury part of the job I had so many years ago was that if a seafarer died at sea or if there was an accident, I would go round with others. I would go round and break the news to the next of kin, to the wife, to the mother, whatever it was. And usually it was our policy to stay in close touch with the families as long as we could. I worked for some time with the Sailors Children's Society in Hull. On September the 9th, 1980, I had a wake-up call from my boss in London telling me that he'd been reported that the bulk carrier Derbyshire appeared to have gone missing. I was to cancel whatever I was doing and to phone Bibby's to ask if there was anything I could do. I talked with Stan Clayton. He was a welfare or personnel officer. He said he would be in touch. I heard nothing at all that day, and then the news broke out on the 6 o'clock news television. And a number of the families got to know of the loss of their loved ones or the loss of the ship over the media. The following morning, Stan phoned and asked if I would go with him to visit the families in the Liverpool area. And during the day, we met about 10 of the families. It was a scene of devastation and bewilderment and unbelief. Stan did most of the talking, of course, and I left my phone number. The next weeks, months were absolutely chaotic. The media had a field day. Every kind of scenario was being reported and every kind of theory was being expounded. The families being hounded by the media from pillar to post. They were asking them to comment on almost everything. One mother I talked to said, "I can't mourn the loss of my son. This is like an open wound because the phone is going all day long." The Lord Mayor's appeal for money made matters worse. The distribution was so wrapped up in red tape that I'm not sure if any families that I know received anything at all. I suggested that any phone calls they received, they passed on my number, which a number of them did, and so things eventually settled down, but the media hung on in there. Early in 1982, I had a phone call from Vicky King. Her son had gone down with the ship. She'd asked if she could meet with some of the Liverpool families, and so we gathered the Liverpool families we were involved with, and we met in the Swedish mission, where she told us of Peter Ridyard. He lost a son. He was a Lloyd's assessor, a loss adjuster. She told us of Peter Ridyard's suspicions concerning the loss of the vessel. We arranged to have a memorial service that year, which we did in the Anglican Church in the Lady Chapel. And then the following year, in 1983, we met at Crosby, the Crosby Seaman Centre, Mersey Mission to Seafarers, where the Derbyshire Families Association was inaugurated. Officially, we would have 2 meetings a year, one a memorial service here in this church, thanks to Nicholas Frayling, and we would have an AGM sometime during the spring. We asked all the family members, we urged them to write to their local MPs and to any other persons of influence with a view of getting an inquest into the loss of the ship. We found that the union in Liverpool, the Seamen's Union in Liverpool, were already working toward that end, and their local office in Paradise Street became the sort of nerve centre where we met regularly, and we drank gallons of coffee with Billy Anderson, our host. We found a lot of work was being done behind the scenes by different people, experts in their field, and different organisations, all seeking to bring about a formal inquiry. In 1987, it was announced that an inquiry would take place. It proved to be an absolute disaster for the families. The inquiry findings stated that the ship was probably overcome by the force of nature. The feeling that the inquiry was a whitewash, the feeling was that it was a whitewash, leaving everyone confused and angry. When the report came out, after this inquiry, Des King, he asked for a copy of the report and he was told it was only being sent out to interested parties. Once the DFA had found its balance, the Derbyshire Families Association found its balance, it was decided we would continue to have the inquiry reopened. One great effect of the inquiry was that more of the family members joined and our ranks swelled. And so the campaign really took off at that time. During that time, as a chaplain, I was greatly concerned not only with the Derbyshire families, of course, with some of the families I'd been involved with, breaking the news of their loved ones. And I was greatly concerned that a lot of the children of these families never got away on holiday. I used to be concerned that when the kids went back to school, whereas the other children would boast of what they'd done, our kids, my kids, as I regarded them, that they never got away. And so with the help of the Felixstowe ferries, we decided we would give these kids and their mums a holiday. So part Derbyshire family and part of the local kids, Liverpool now, we had a holiday in Felixstowe. It was a great time. We had about 5 or 6 days there, 27 of us, 9 mums and the others kids. These kids never sleep. They're wandering around all night. And part of the holiday was we got a trip over to Zeebrugge, which went very, very well. The only problem was we lost just one of the kids. We got onto the ferry, and just before they pulled the gangway up, just before they sailed, this kid turned up. And that was the start of something big. The next year, we were in London, and we were staying in the Merchant Navy Hotel. Again, different families and that. And they found that in each of the rooms was a phone. We wouldn't allow them to phone home because the mums were with them. But each room had a phone, and the kids found they could phone each other. All night, the phones were going. We got a day out. Where did we go to? Oh, the first day we were there, we were doing a tourist bit. We went into Westminster Abbey, and I had one of the kids. He was intent. He wanted to blow as many candles out as he could. And I was hanging on to him. When we got outside, we had lost, when we did a head count, 6 of the kids had gone missing. We found them eventually in Hyde Park. We had a holiday up in, I'm rambling just for a few moments, yeah. We had a holiday up in Pitlochry in the Highlands of Scotland, in a big old house, a massive thing, full of bedrooms, and the dining room had a table which seated 30, and a very high ceiling with a light, a lamp, a bulb, and it must have been about 15 watts. When you put the light on, you couldn't see who was sitting next to you. It was a really dark place. But the kids loved it with all these passages and all these stairs. I had to keep counting their heads. The last one we had was Southampton, and we had a day out in Le Havre. And when we got to Le Havre, I think again there was about 30 of us. Within 2 hours, I'd lost every single one of them. It took a while to find them, and on the way back, the highlight was when we got back, there was one kid, he'd be about 9 or 10, never been out of Liverpool before. He didn't want to get off the ferry, and he wrapped himself around the rails, and we couldn't prise him loose. We did everything. I can't remember how we eventually got him loose. He could be still there for all I know. But eventually we got done. But we shared the time, but we got to know a lot of the Derbyshire families through this. The campaign went on, greatly enhanced by the publication of Captain Dave Ramwell's book, A Ship Too Far. We had AGMs in Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle, South Shields. We had a lot of meetings in London. Pam Brown usually made funds available for us from all kinds of resources. And Roy Paul from the Mersey Mission to Seafarers, he made great use of his minibus, taking us backwards and forwards. You know, they gave an amazing amount of time to helping out. They're great people. Dave, who was a prolific writer, he was sending letters to every possible publication. They printed articles on the Derbyshire and our campaign. Paul Lambert, of course, he followed every single lead he possibly could. He was our chairman, and he was exceptionally busy during that time. I spent a lot of time speaking at various churches, not only Anglican, but the free churches, telling them about the work. In 1993, 7 or 8 of us met with David Mearns in London. David was with Oceaneering Technologies, an American company. He gave us a presentation convincing us that they were able to find the Derbyshire. Mark Dickinson, he was with ITF at the time, he was at the meeting and he took the message back to the ITF and they agreed to fund the search. In June 1994, they found the ship amazingly, 2 miles down. They found the ship. The shipping world was elated, but for many of the Derbyshire families, it was devastation. Margaret Nobles had lost her husband on the ship. And she said to me once, before he went onto the Derbyshire, she said he was away at sea for many years, but sometimes he would come home on leave, and he would arrive home at the middle of the night, and he would ring the doorbell, and she would go down and let him in. And she said after the loss of the Derbyshire, many years afterwards, she said she would wake up believing the doorbell had gone. And she would go down and open the door to find, of course, there was nobody there. And a number of the families, because there was nothing definite, I think they secretly nursed this idea that the crew were not lost, they were possibly on a desert island or somewhere else. And it may well be that they would turn up, but with the finding of the Derbyshire, it was devastating. And the old wounds were opened up again. 2 more years were to go by before the government decided or were pressured into a return to the wreck site. The families met with a lot of the experts and lots of trips to London took place. In 1997, the government selected a team and they went back and took 140,000 pictures of the wreckage site. And then, of course, they took months to analyse and to debate what we would do. We were still pushing for the reopening of the inquiry with little or no response from the powers that be. In 1997 election year, Billy Anderson phoned and asked if we could meet with if the Liverpool families could meet because John Prescott was in Liverpool. We met in the Stella Maris Club and John Prescott promised that if Labour came to power, which they did, he would do everything he could to have the inquiry reopened. Now, we'd already been involved with 9 ministers of transport who'd made numerous promises that he didn't fulfil. But John Prescott promised, and he was as good as his word. And in the year 2000, the inquiry took place. The families were told at the start that there would be no financial compensation, but it was never about that. I personally feel that the 22 recommendations made by the inquiry are the next step in the evolution of shipping. These recommendations are already and will continue to save lives at sea. They are preserving life. After the inquiry, we decided we no longer needed our AGM meetings, but we would continue to meet and have a memorial service every 5 years. We would keep in touch. Over the years, there was a growing feeling that some type of memorial was needed. The crew needed to be remembered. The story had to be told to coming generations, and in memory of so many family members who had passed on. About 5 years ago, we had the invaluable help of Jeff Green, who's a local historian, a friend, and we formed the Derbyshire Trust Fund charity, a registered charity, and set about raising the funding. The final cost was so much more than the original estimate, but thanks to so many of you here today, this day couldn't have happened without you. And so we are very grateful, not only to the bigger companies who have given, but to the smaller associations and to all who are involved, the Merchant Navy branches up and down the area, and individuals who are so very, very generous and concerned. And so on behalf of the Derbyshire families here today, I say to you many, many thanks. Raising funds, of course, is only part of it. Finding the site, the right site, took a lot of searching. We had lots of promises, and so much came, but so little happened. But I believe that now we have the very best site possible. I think it's the best site ever because where it is, it's looking over the river, almost directly opposite the house where I was born. So it's a bonus as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. The site we got is thanks due to the generosity of Dr. Reverend Crispin, the rector and the committee of this beautiful church. There were so many people who would have loved to have been here today, so many who have passed on, so many who gave their all to the cause. Kathy Musa, Ellen Burke, Margaret Nobles, Mr. and Mrs. Lambert, Des and Vicky King, Marion Bayliss, the Williamsons, the Buckleys, or Mr. Buckley, Gina Coltman, Eddie Lloyden, MP, Peter Idiot, so many more. And we're grateful for those who are here today, dear Mr. and Mrs. Hutchinson, and Ross Blees and Norma, and the Buckleys and Marie, the Johnsons, the Tysons, the Noblets, the Muses, so many more. You see, they were not just involved with the movement as such. They were the backbone. They were the very soul of the movement over the years. I conclude. Let me say to those of you who have been involved with us through it all, especially to the families, and more especially to Captain Dave and Julie Ramwell, and Paul and Anne Lambert, Paul MBE. We have climbed every mountain more than once. We have spent a long, long time in the valleys. But today, we can breathe out. We have crossed the finishing line. We have arrived. We made it. Well done, all of you. Well done, and God bless you.